What's going on, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and today we continue to talk about what is brewing, developing, and building inside of one Jets drive under the new regime here with General Manager Darren Muji and, of course, new head coach Aaron Glenn, and why I think we are underselling and undervaluing some of the true elite talent we already have on this roster. But let's start with Aaron Glenn. And by the way, guys, if you are a Jets fan, something you need to check out is there's a new show on YouTube called Jets Offseason, a behind the scenes look. Think about like Hard Knocks, right? They do it every year, kind of going behind the scenes with the Jets. And it's an exciting time because you see things like Aaron Glenn when he just started, the beginning of free agency, kind of in the Jets draft war room and things of that nature. I think it's a good watch. You should go ahead and check it out, Jets Offseason on YouTube. One of the things that Aaron Glenn said right off the top in one of the first episodes is exactly what we have been talking about here on Jets Latest as it relates to his vision, as it relates with the intentionality of what he is doing here to build a new culture, a new brand, a new pride for the green and white. Check out one of the things he had to say very early on. He goes, I don't want to collect players. I want to build a football team. I think there's a huge difference. What I mean by that is I don't just want to get a group of athletes in here and say, let's go play football. There's a purpose for every person that is brought into the building, and there is a reason why they are in this building. And we have seen that literally since the beginning here on Jets Latest. I have been repeating this message, the intentionality, the vision, the focus. They keep on using verbs like aggressive, physical, resilient, smart, right? That's what versatile. We continue to talk about that. And I got to tell you, I was watching the Jets offseason show, right? And they kind of interviewed every one of the kind of first wave of free agent guys that came in, the Brandon Stevens, the Ciscos of the world, the Reynolds of the world, the Cowards of the world. And they really all did talk the same. They all talked the same about loving football. They all talked the same about being violent and aggressive. They all talked about that. It is clear there was a brand, okay? Another thing Aaron Glenn talked about was doing this not only for the players, but for the coaches as well. That he had a very specific purpose for his coaches. He wanted his coaches to be teachers. That speaks to the developmental culture we have been talking about here on Jets Latest. He talked about kind of having the right feel and characteristics and family atmosphere of growing together, ingratiating yourself to his teammates. It is all the same. It is a common purpose. And if I got to tell you the truth, the idea of he's saying he just doesn't want a collection of football players, I think that was a shot at the previous regime when we used to make the splashy signings. We used to be in the media. We used to win the offseason. This is a different way of operating with the focus truly being on team fit. I thought it was interesting the way they talked about bringing back Sherwood as the kind of first free agent that they re-signed. You know what I mean? And how he embodies that. They really are talking about the fit and what it means to be a Jet, what it means. And I think that was really important. I said this from the beginning. Aaron Glenn, being a former Jet, sees kind of pride and bringing that back for the green and white. And that is in vogue in the NFL. Dan Campbell was a former Lion. Vrabel, a former Patriot. Harbaugh, a former Charger. D'Amico Ryans in Houston, a former Texan. I think that is very important, and I think this intentionality is very, very clear. I want to remind everybody about that. And that is, something that doesn't show up a lot of times on paper, something that isn't like in stats, right? But I think does help a team grow and accelerate that process. Remember, Aaron Glenn saw it in Detroit where they literally were winless, and now they are a true contender in the NFC, winning divisions, going to NFC championship games. If we're patient and let this kind of culture take root, I think we could be in the same spot. But let's not get it twisted. There is talent on this roster as well, okay? And you can't just be kind of kumbaya working hard. You got to have some talent. And let me tell you something. I think the Jets have incredible skill position talent that we respect on a certain level, but maybe not as much as we should. The first is at wideout with Garrett Wilson, who, by the way, will have his college quarterback at Ohio State, Justin Fields, throwing to him, right, for that culture, that development, all that good stuff. But I've talked about Garrett Wilson a ton. If you know here on Jets Latest, I've gone into some of the deep stats that I talk about that I have over at FTN Fantasy. And I think it's really important to see that Garrett Wilson was elite. He was a true wide receiver one. Let me give you some of the stats to back this up here with Garrett Wilson. All right. He had 101 catches last year. That was tied for fourth most among wideouts last year. Tied with CeeDee Lamb. Everyone respects CeeDee Lamb as one of the best wideouts in the NFL. His 1,104 yards was top 10 in the league. He had 153 targets last year. A true alpha, a true target monster. And that was with Davante Adams on the other side, who got 141 targets on his own. Garrett Wilson's going to get even fed more this year. If you think about his 101 catches, listen to these names. Only Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Neighbors, DJ Moore, Justin Jefferson had 95 catches last year. That's the group that Garrett Wilson is in. I don't think he gets respected as much. When you talk about the 1,100 yards, it's only those guys, plus guys like, Brian Thomas Jr., who people are thinking is one of a breakout kind of rookies last year in Jacksonville, right? So he is truly in the upper tier in terms of just his production. Then I talk about his catchable target rate, okay? He had poor targets. He had a lot of targets that went his way that were just straight up not catchable. The 72.5% among these guys was the sixth highest. That means he was getting less opportunities, less quote-unquote catchable balls, which is why his adjusted catch rate of 91% is fourth among the top 10, behind only Amon-Ra and CeeDee Lamb, and then Ladd McConkey as well, right? So I think there is room for Garrett Wilson to do even better than he did last year, where he was, by all accounts, a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL that's going under-respected. His 4 drops were the second lowest among wide receivers with that many targets. The only one who was better in terms of not dropping the ball, by the way, another Detroit comparison, was Amon-Ra St. Brown. Garrett Wilson is, if we keep on making these Detroit comps, going to look like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is widely respected as a Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I think Garrett Wilson is going to be unlocked even more, respected even more as a true top tier wide receiver one alpha in this league, and he is already on the roster. I also want to say the same thing about Breece Hall. Okay, a lot of people are saying he had a down year last year, right? He was in trade reports and things of that nature going into the draft. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. Breece Hall is one of the better young running backs in the NFL. I know he's on the last year of his deal, and people talking about maybe they're not going to sign him, but honestly, let's look into the stats. First of all, I talked about this on a previous episode of Jets Latest. He was one of the best receiving backs in the NFL last year, okay? His receiving yards, third amongst running backs. Receptions, fourth among running backs, right? Third among running backs in, explosive catches. Fourth among running backs in receiving touchdowns. Top 5 among running backs in literally most stats as a receiver from the running back position, okay? So I think that is clear. He ran for 876 yards last year. That was 22nd in the league. Okay, outside the top 20. I can hear how people are going to say that, that was a down year. But let me show you, as we go a little bit deeper, why the offensive line, and I've said this, really is going to change everything, especially for a guy like Breece Hall. In a previous episode of Jets Latest, talked about great offensive lines and their impact, and in kind of yards before contact that some of the studs like Saquon and Henry and other people had. His yards before contact, Breece Hall, was 1.3. Out of the top 22 running backs, that was tied for the lowest there. So he was getting hit earlier than all of the running backs that had more yards. He was at that deficit. However, his 2.9 yards after contact was tied for 5th best among that group. So he was getting hit earlier, but he was still making stuff happen at a better rate for better production than most of the running backs that ran for more yards than him. So imagine if he has that offensive line, right? His avoided tackle rate of 20% was 12th among the top 22 running backs. So he's able to juke and avoid tackles. He's able to get yards after contact, all right? And his explosive run rate that runs over 10 or more yards was 12.4%, 7th among that top 22 running backs, where Breece Hall was number 22. What does that say? That says that yes, he was outside the top 20 in the league with 876 rushing yards. 22nd in the NFL among running backs. But he was getting hit earlier than all of those running backs. He was doing more with less than most of those running backs. So now we lock up the offensive line, a healthy Olu, Membu on the other side, right? This should be also, quite frankly, the added element of Justin Fields in the running game. When you have like potential read options, right? Where they can't just only focus on Hall in the running game. I actually think all of these things combined should benefit Breece Hall. He should have a statistically better season than last year and be able to show his true skills at the running back position. I'm projecting potentially a Pro Bowl season for Breece Hall. And with Garrett Wilson, I think now it's stability. Now with his boy, his kind of stats should go even higher. I'm talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of level. I think it's Garrett Wilson to the moon, if you want to know the truth, which is why here on Jets Latest, we've been talking about getting him that extension now as opposed to next year. You want to get the extension now until after he puts up some of these kind of numbers, and then all of a sudden his contract will be more and more expensive, maybe being respected in the Lamb, Jefferson, Chase kind of money, right? So I think we need to extend him, but there's a lot of reasons to believe that the pure skill set of Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson are going to be explosive for this Jets offense. But the main thing, honestly, is the fact that it is so clear that every single thing Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji are doing are intentional, are with focus. We talked about it with like roles for Mason Taylor and Arian Smith. We talked about it with the versatility of some of these defensive pieces like Brandon Stevens, Malachi Moore, Kiko. They have a focus, they have a vision, they know what it takes, and they are looking for a specific type of player. That is how you build a culture, just like Aaron Glenn saw in Detroit. That'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. Remember, watch these videos, like these videos, subscribe to the Jets Latest channel, and tell a Jets fan friend to tell a Jets fan friend, because it's an exciting new time to get in on the ground floor with the green and white. And if you want to hear more from me, spitting statistician Dane Martinez, I am the host of the FTN Fantasy Show over on SiriusXM, channel 87, the fantasy channel. We took more than just the Jets. It's really focused on fantasy football coming up, fantasy baseball right now, but it's all sports as well. The NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, it doesn't matter. FTN Fantasy is a great website, a lot of tools and data to help you win your leagues and win that cash. Great content, Discord, all sorts of stuff that you can find me over there at as well. But that'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. Please remember to keep it locked, because we will continue to give you the real here day to day on the Jets on what I believe is going to be a very exciting 2025. Get in now on the ground floor while you still can. We will be back tomorrow to be sure. But for now, we out of here.